Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cycling Across the USA. Tonight, we are joined by Fred Smoak, who's a cycling enthusiast who enjoys cross-country treks. So please remain muted during the presentation, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. And also, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and we can go ahead and read them out for you. And Fred, whenever you are ready, you can begin.
Okay. Well, it's nice to have you all here. I appreciate your taking time. The little message up there conveys a thought that I don't necessarily agree with, but is very common in the cycling world. But for myself, I've enjoyed cycling for over 50 years now. I dropped it like a hot rock when I first got my driver's license, but I picked it up again when I report at my first duty station at Mather Air Force Base in California. And I guess, one of the things I feel like cycling lets you experience things on a human scale. When you're hiking, if you see those mountains in the distance in the morning, they're still going to be in the distance in the afternoon and into the evening and probably the next day. If you're driving, things flash by before you can really see them. And cycling gives you a chance to appreciate things that are going on, and time to think about it, time to have it percolate. As far as this, my desire to ride across the country had been around for a while, but by 2015, it was becoming a do it or give up on it type thing. Going across the country, may sound daunting. It is. Even after I got over the Rockies, the first time I would wake up at night and wonder at the audacity of trying to do it on a bike. But it really is not so bad if you take it one day at a time. And a friend of mine breaks it down even further. Since the rest stops are generally 20 miles apart, he says your only real decision is if you want to ride another 20 miles. Not that great a distance. And after that, you can worry about what comes next. If you're going to consider taking a multi-day ride, the first thing to think about is what kind of experience you want. You can always strap on some panniers and go and camp wherever you end up. That's called unsupported. There's also credit card support where you slap on whatever you're going to need to go and you just stop at motels and pull out your credit card whenever you want. We found this, this is not the owner of the bike. This is a friend of mine. You can tell by the jersey, but this guy who was riding this bike had graduated in 2015 with no particular job prospects. So he put all this stuff on the bike. He went from Boston down to Key West, over to San Diego, up to Seattle, and we found him at the edge of Lake Erie as he was headed back to Boston to see if the job market had gotten any better. As for me, I thought I needed some support, so I looked on the internet, as people do, and found the Fuller Bicycle Adventure. I quickly determined that the reason they call it an adventure is whenever something goes wrong, they can say that's part of the adventure. But, they provide support. I looked at a couple of different places. One of them, they said, oh, and won't it be nice when you come in from a hard day's cycling that we've already turned your air conditioner on? I thought that'd be nice, but it's not going to rock my world. Then I tabbed down and they wanted $10,000, not counting your hotels and meals. Fuller, on the other hand, and this is their ride this go round, Fuller was willing to get me across the country in 2015 for $4,500, and that included meals and lodging. At that price point, you have to make some accommodations. I really wasn't sure what they were, but I'll get into that later. Well, one of my life axioms is you make your biggest decisions with the least information. And I'll say, you wouldn't buy a used car without knowing more about it than you do when you decide to have children or take a job or even go away to college. So I signed up without really knowing what to expect. But I found another rider in the area, and her husband was going to be the SAG for the trip to drive one of the support vehicles. So I rode down with them to Americus and then out to Oceanside, California, where we were going to begin. I began to get a feeling for Fuller when we went all the way without needing to stop, without needing a hotel or, any sort of lodging. We found people all along the way who were enthusiasts of the Fuller Center and happy to put us up for the night. The next thing you need if you're, after you've decided, is you need a bike. This is the bike that I bought for my first trip. It's a long haul trucker made by Surly. It's kind of an iconic touring bike. I got it. I had a bike that I wasn't enthused about, and I got doored, and the insurance company gave me $1,400 more than I asked for, which happened to be the price of this bike. I figured Providence wanted me to have it, so I went ahead and got it. But it's really a touring bike. If you were going unsupported, the guy with all the gear that I showed you his bike before, underneath all that was also a long haul trucker. It's a bike, and I decided that it was just kind of too heavy to get over the Rockies. But when I first got it, I just thought it was almost too pretty to ride. After going through Kansas, I reevaluated that thought. It seemed like riding it was what it was designed for. But it is a heavy steel bike, and getting it over the Rockies was tough. So I went looking and for my next trip, I got a titanium Linsky. If anybody knows of Lightspeed, the bike maker Lightspeed, that was started by Linsky. He sold out and then went back into making bikes on his own. These are handmade in Chattanooga. You can see the twisted tubes. I actually paid extra for those. They assure me that they have a mechanical advantage associated with them, but I just think it's a piece of artwork. It's a beautiful bike. I still enjoy riding both my bikes. I ride the titanium bike when I go up towards Poolsville because there are a lot of hills. If I'm going downtown, I'll ride the long haul trucker. These are some of the routes I've done. This is 2015, starting in Oceanside, going to Portland. The different colors are weeks. So at the end of every week, we would stop at a relatively connected place because some people are not going the whole route. They're just going for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and they have to be able to get to transportation, and some people are joining us. So the route is structured along that basis. Having chosen to go for, with Fuller, the selection of the route was pretty much, already done for me. But I generally think there are 3 different ways you can go. You can go the southern route, but that involves going across the southwestern desert. Even supported, that's a formidable proposition. We went through, from Oceanside to Phoenix to Page, and probably some of the hardest riding I've ever done. You can also go the middle, say going from San Francisco to Washington. That takes you through some of the higher mountains, the more difficult mountains, and then you're in the Midwest, and the Midwest is just plain boring. One cornfield looks just like every other cornfield. It's like being on the ocean. You may see yourself making progress on a chart, but you certainly can't tell, from looking around whether you're going anywhere. You can also go the northern route. It's cold. It never really warms up. If you're going through Idaho and Montana, you can find, cold, wet temperatures well into the summer. So this was my second route. You can see the original route, we started south, but then we went north. This one we started north and then we dropped south. 2017, I didn't do the cross country. which, I went from Seattle to San Diego. Really wonderful to ride the West Coast. 2018, I did the 1 week Natchez Trace, and 2019 was doing the Great Circle route. It's actually was longer than going cross country, and certainly tougher riding because you're just in the mountains most of the time. All the routes have pluses and minuses. You just have to decide, you should know what you're getting into. The first thing you need to know about Fuller, and I'm going to talk about Fuller because that's where I've done most of my long distance riding, is it's not a cycling company. It's the Fuller Center, and it was founded by Millard Fuller, who also founded Habitat for Humanity. When he left Habitat, a few years later, after Katrina, he was asked to get back into things, and he started the Fuller Center. So, they're going to do things differently. Fuller is ecumenical and has a definite Christian slant. There are builds along the way, but most nights you stay in churches. You sleep on the floor or the pew or wherever you can find. The churches are encouraged to feed you. They like it. We talked about getting, places where you could join or leave the ride. I've spent weekends in San Francisco. This is Las Vegas. I've also, Seattle. Then you also stay in places where there are burrows in the street. The claim to fame of this particular town was it was the entranceway to Death Valley. The burrows were one of the more interesting things about it, but you just see a tremendous cross section of the country as you cycle. So every day with Fuller, you try, and as the days wear on, sometimes you need to psych yourself up to be enthused. But every ride starts off with passing out the route sheets. And the route sheet gives you every turn that you need to get from here to there. This was my favorite route sheet from biking to Cortez, 63 miles. You can see you had half a mile to get on the road. You went 60 miles and you had a 1/10 of a mile to get back to the other one. Some route sheets can go front and back. But out west, there's quite often only one road to going from here to there. After the route sheet, most people have some kind of electric or mechanical aid to them. I like to ride with GPS, but others use Garmin or one of its competitors. You get the route loaded in advance. It chimes to let you know when a turn is coming up. And after directions, the first thing you need is your elevation map. This one was crossing Wolf Creek Pass to get over the Rockies. You can see, you want to look at it, you're going from 6,500 to over 10,000 feet. And while it's steep, you also want to look at the scale, because if it's a short day, the scale might look, the climbs might look more gradual. A day in the Midwest might have something like this, but the hill is only 200 feet instead of 4,000 feet. On the other hand, this was a great day. We made it to the top of Wolf Creek Pass at an elevation of 10,857 feet. That's about as high as I have ever gone on my bike. Some other routes. This is one, if I'm going to have to do a climb like this, I'd rather do it early. So, it's not so bad. This is what I really like. By 15 miles, I'm, at the top of the hill, and I can just sort of coast down, hitting the brakes every once in a while. The next thing you need is sleeping spaces. I said you stay in churches. Some of them are heavily trafficked areas where the church might have a school. It might even have a gym. One of the first things you're going to do when you get somewhere is get a sleeping space. I regarded this as an ideal sleeping space. I had distance from other people. I even had a little sink to brush my teeth. I had outlets. Outlets are important, at least for me, because some of these people snore like chainsaws. And I use earbuds to try and drown out the noise, or at least, even it out. And so having an outlet means I can charge my phone and drown out the noise at the same time. Not every church is quite so luxurious. This is another church we stayed at. You can see my bike is this one right here. Everybody got their own pew, but that's a lot of people and their luggage to cram into one church. On the other hand, it's one of the few times I've been encouraged to sleep in the pews. And so, sometimes, if there's enough space and enough chairs, you can make a little bedding. I like this because as I get older, I have more trouble getting up off the floor. And this gets me up. You can see my stuff in the little cubicle in back. And then occasionally there is no church. This is Wamsutter, Wyoming. They didn't have a church that we could find to stay at, so we stayed in a pavilion. I slept on a concrete picnic table. Haven't done that since college when I would go on occasional fishing trips. But like I say, that's why they call it the adventure. Whenever something goes wrong, that's the adventure. If you're going 60 to 100 miles a day, you are what you eat. Fuller guarantees you 5 staples: bread, peanut butter, milk, bananas, and cereal. Like I said, for $4,500, you have to make some accommodations. This is me enjoying one of my favorite snacks when I could get it. Banana covered with Nutella and sprinkled with peanuts. Gives you enough energy to make it for the next 20 miles. As I said, the churches are encouraged to feed you, and for many times, they are delighted to do so. Some of them even make it an event. We stayed at one church where on the Natchez Trace, where a woman said, we only have 2 events every year in this little town. We have you guys coming through, and we have the Banana Pudding Festival. Well, the Banana Pudding Festival winner from a prior year brought her entry, and it was awesome. But you're never quite sure what you're going to get with a church. Some of them have elaborate kitchens, some of them have very rudimentary kitchens, and some of them have no kitchens. Where there are no kitchens, sometimes you'll just have to go out and the meal is on your own, or you're just living on cereal. Either way, you're probably if somebody's feeding you or we're cooking for ourselves, they're probably leftovers. The one thing it's hard to find is a toaster. No one seems to have made an industrial toaster. Here's another rest stop. That was Peter. Peter liked those shorts. He would like to relax in a bit of shade and take his shoes off and relax. He had a different method of relaxing and sleeping. The last one was in the desert. Now we're right next to a babbling brook, more like a whole river, I guess. And, but eventually you come to the end, and your routine when you arrive is generally you want to see the whiteboard. The whiteboard has all the information you should need for for that evening. Putting it all in one place also keeps you from having to ask, people what's going on. What you maybe have things doing depending on your chore team. Everybody has a chore team, and they, some of them are in the morning and some of them are in the afternoon, but the whiteboard is the first thing you look at. It gives you things like your Wi-Fi password, your dinner plans, lights out and wake up, shower information. This whiteboard was from Quartzsite, and it can be a little hard to read, but it says, "Welcome to Quartzsite. Single stall shower to the left, bathrooms also. For 40 people, one shower takes a while to get through. Don't drink the water. It had been polluted by mining, and you had to buy water. Sleep on the pews, no bare feet, no stocking feet, wear shoes because of scorpions. Supper on your own, no Wi-Fi, try McDonald's." At the same time, they were welcoming, and Silly Al's Pizza down the street was having $2 margarita night, so it was not a bad place to be. As for the scorpions, the next day the guy showed us this little guy that he said he found in a light switch. Apparently they like to crawl into those small crevices, and quite frequently they short out the fixture and electrocute themselves. So there was some thought that maybe, he had this that he just showed everybody, but I kept my shoes on. One of the things about being on a ride with a schedule is you have to meet the schedule. You're expected to show up at a certain time. You're expected to leave at a certain time. And weather is something that you just have to work around. I've been frozen, soaked, baked, and in this particular case, I was scared I was going to be blown away by a tornado. We're obviously the little blue dot, and there is no city around there. That was a three-sided farm equipment shed from an abandoned house that we had to stay in until the storm passed. And that purple bit was just headed right at us. I mentioned we have, here's another screenshot of pulling into Palm Springs, California. 106 and sunny. We were pulling in, and it was so hot that one of my shoes that was on the sun side, my toes were just frying. And I finally had to stop and take my shoe off and pour a little water on the sock to be able to go on. At which point a friend I was riding with looked at me a little bit chagrined and asked if I had any more of that water, because he had run out half an hour ago or so. You take what you get. That's going across the southwestern desert. As I said, we do stop and do builds along the way. Most of the time we're rehabbing houses or doing some work for people, and because it's just much more expensive to put up a new house. This is a build we were doing in Peoria for an African-American veteran named Oscar. He was a Vietnam vet, and his house was just getting away from him. He couldn't afford to have anybody do the work for him, and he could no longer do it himself. But, this was the garage that I worked on. We took the whole roof off. First, we had to evict a family of raccoons. Took the whole roof off, put a new roof on. We ran a wood chipper from 10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, landscaping, painted his foundation, put new screen in his window frames because he didn't have air conditioning, and it was, he didn't want the mosquitoes, but at the same time, it was just absolutely, blistering inside. He just could not believe what was happening to him. 60s, 70s vet in a low income area, 20 or 30 white guys show up and start, doing everything. We even painted his foundation, because foundations are required to be painted in Peoria. It's something they just ding you for when they're dinging you for everything else. I don't really have many pictures of the builds because we're just kind of busy, but another build was Scotty, who was an 80s widow who lived halfway up a mountain in Craig, Colorado. and she heated the log cabin that she built herself from a kit, but still, with one wood stove. And the people who had come and helped her stack the wood before hadn't done it to her liking. So we unloaded 3 tiers of wood, and she stood in the door and passed on every piece as it went by. And she would either reject it or stack it herself. Because, for example, if your wood stove will burn 16-inch wood, a 17-inch piece of wood is no good to you. And, the whole time she kept up her end of the conversation. She had 5 children herself and fostered 5. None of them ever got in any trouble. She was a formidable woman, and, I can imagine that none of her children ever wanted to come home and tell her they had screwed up. There was another build in Colorado Springs that I particularly liked just because of the nature of it. It was a children's facility, but it was somewhere where they had decided to fund something to try and keep Child Protective Services from being involved. So you could leave your child any age from an infant up until 9 or 10 from the looks of the furniture for up to 3 days, no questions asked. You might have a job interview, you might have a doctor's appointment, you might be feeling sick, you might just not feel like you were able to care for the child. You were just too run ragged. You could leave it there, but it was run down. We painted it. We took the rundown landscaping and made it look like a high-end park. I was in charge of painting the windows, but the first thing I found was that there were big gaps between the window and the walls. So I went and had somebody get some caulk, and we caulked all the way around the windows to keep the moisture and out and the heat in. And we left it looking pristine. And that's one of the things. You never know what you're going to find when you start working on some of these things. The road will continually surprise you. This is from the, from the exhibit, from the museum from American Gothic. They have life-size figures there, and I thought I might see how I would do in the fine art world. I think I look more realistic than the other two. We have signs. One of the things people do is you take pictures of yourself every time you cross into another state. I, for the life of me, don't know why. Welcome to Colorful Colorado is a sign in just brown and white. But you take pictures of every place you stop, every place that there's a state sign, you take a picture of it. I could not hold the long haul trucker over my head, the bike I rode the first year, but I could hold the Linsky up. And this is my favorite. They had a border marker. I think it's Utah and Colorado, out in the Moab. And, you could stand with 1 foot in each state. Things that you don't see. We had been biking through the desert for 50, 60 miles, and suddenly there is a boat storage facility. We were coming up on Lake Mead, but you sure couldn't tell it from where we were. You can see the desert is just right up there, and the desert is on the other side. It's just that lake, which apparently is, considerably drier than it was when I went by. Just absolutely beautiful views. That's a mountain that I wouldn't want to climb. Found a steamroller that no one was using, so we decided to stage a few scenes with it. Once again, that's Peter in his tights being run over. And I have always teased my wife that, she loves museums, that she would go to a museum of dirt. And lo and behold, here was the Dirt Hall of Fame. It turns out to be for dirt bikes and dirt racing and things like that. But still, how many times do you get to find a dirt hall of fame? And the following year, I didn't go, but there was the Museum of Clean available. All things clean. You know, a clean related art gallery, garage clutter display. And I'm not sure if you guys can read this, but hands-on history of antique cleaning tools. Do you fit in a wash tub? They have a replica of Noah's Ark. You can visit their outhouse. More than 70 photo stops, such as our mop bucket night, giant garbage can, or space shuttle trash compactor. So if you want to go dirt or you want to go clean, you can do it. Picture of Utah. Utah has so much cool stuff that would be, you know, top tier exhibits or top tier attractions in other places. But in Utah, it's just another, you know, great looking or, you know, strange looking thing. If you're going along the West Coast, you'll see these signs all the time, entering and leaving tsunami zones. If you're leaving a tsunami zone, that means you're probably going uphill. When you're entering, you get a little bit of a downhill ride. And I'm glad I never had to pedal against whatever wind it was that did this to this tree. But there again, that's on the West Coast, and you can see it's determined to survive, but it's a tough road. And here is something from New England. You know you're in the process of gentrifying when your cooler has both champagne and worms and night crawlers. So here we are, you know, as I say, some of these places out west, there's only one road from here to there and there's nobody on it anyway. You can bike down the middle of the road if that's your pleasure. You know, I really feel like as I look at it or as I think about it, I sometimes think of America the Beautiful. You know, there are some spacious skies out there. I've seen the amber waves of grain, Purple Mountain's majesty. I'm not even sure which mountain this is. I have lots of mountain pictures if anybody wants to see more. And I've been through orchards and vineyards, but I never took pictures of them. So you have to settle for the Fruta, Colorado, which is a nice little town with a great public pool, but it could use a couple of extra restaurants. And that's it. So let's talk about whatever anybody is interested in.
Well, thank you so much for all of that, Fred. It was really interesting to hear. Out of all the routes that you've done, which one do you think is your favorite so far?
You know, they used to say about basic training, I'm so proud that I did it, but I would never go back and do it again. So the 2019 ride from Portland, you know, all the way down to to Death Valley. We stopped at the Grand Canyon. We stopped at Redwood National Park. We stopped at Glacier. That, I think, was the ride that I have was the most engaging. For one thing, you didn't have to go across the Midwest and go through, 3 weeks of going through cornfields. I like cycling out in the West. I cycle in the East all the time, obviously. And, you know, it's just not nearly as boring. In the West, there's always something to look at. There's a mountain. You may have to climb that mountain, but at least you get to watch, see it approach. The desert is fascinating. You know, when you drive through it, you don't really appreciate it, but it's a series of microclimates. You may find one spot where there are tons of saguaro cactus, then it may be just bare sand and then low scrub, and then a field of flowers if it's if it's rained recently. It's I like being cycling out in the West.
Anyone else have any questions for Fred?
So Fred, so these little adventures are 9-10 weeks?
Yeah,
when
11
you
weeks.
11 weeks when you go across country?
Yeah, well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It looks like 9 weeks for the Seattle to Pittsburgh or Seattle to Washington. The first one, I believe, oh, no. I believe this one was 11 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 weeks. So that was 10 weeks. Yeah, but 11 weeks if you count travel to get there and get back.
Wow, that's a big chunk of a year.
It's a long time and it gets, but by the end, most people who have done the whole thing are sad to see it over.
Well, I would imagine that. I mean, I would imagine you really bond with people and you make lots of new friends. And um, have you ridden with the same people more than once? I mean, do you all like form a group and choose together what your next adventure is going to be?
I wouldn't, basically the Fuller Center, when I started, I thought it was a one and done type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at least a third of the riders on these rides have been on other Fuller Center rides and come back. It's just a very appealing group of people, and they come back year after year. As I said, I've been, started 2015 with this ride, 2016 another cross country, 2017 down the West Coast, 2018 I did the Natchez Trace, just a 1 week ride, but I had surgery when I got back, so I couldn't take the whole summer off. 2019 I did the Great Circle route here. 2020 I got my knee replaced, which kind of shot that year. 2021 was COVID, and 2022 I'm signed up again for the Natchez Trace, and I will see 15 or 20 people at least that I've known before.
Oh, that's nice.
When I went, as I said, when we went cross country, I've been to Seattle and to Oceanside, California, and in neither case did we ever have to stay in a motel. Fuller people put us up. And, my parish, I have offered my parish for 2 or 3 Fuller destinations.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a good record of leaving things better than we found them. We
always
don't.
Good.
Yeah, we try and leave with a very good reputation, and we don't trash things. The guy with the scorpions said he has a lot of people pass through there in groups, and said that we were as nice a group of people and as respectful of each other as anybody he had ever seen.
What is your age range?
The Natchez Trace ride is generally, an older group. It's only a week. It's, not very hilly, at least after you get out of Tennessee. The other rides, the longer and cross-country rides, you're talking about we're missing the middle. We get kids just out of college, sometimes nurses or, people that can have a flexible schedule. And you get people who, like I did the first time in my mid-60s, who have kids are raised enough to, to be able to be left alone and you don't have to worry about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we really miss are that, 30s or 40s late 20s where you have kids. Most of the kids would say, follow dad, sure, you can go, just leave me your ATM card and the PIN number and everything will be fine.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
But so there's a gap there.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of kids who just get out of college and are looking for an adventure who will come. And a lot of people for whom it may be our last hurrah.
Well, there's some questions in the chat. when you take these trips, you go through different climate zones. How do you pack for the variety of temperatures?
You're allowed to have, and it's, more of a suggestion, but the official rule is you can have 4,000 square inches, or cubic inches, I'm sorry, which is really 20 by 20 by 10. It's not that much, but you don't need that much. You need a towel, you need 3 jerseys, you need 3 sets of bike shorts. I use athletic shorts, and, then you use layers. The 2022, I went along the Gulf Coast from, Florida all the way down to Galveston. And the last day it was in the 30s. So
Wow.
I had on a jersey. I had on a long sleeve jersey. I had on, my vest, and I had on my rain jacket. So, and that kept me reasonably warm. Once you start exercising, you do generate enough heat to stay warm. But in cycling in general, when it's, cold outside, if you're comfortable starting out, you're going to be hot in half an hour. And, the better way to do it is to start out chilly
Mm-hmm.
and then warm up.
Mm-hmm.
In the desert, when we were going across the desert, I would be cold every morning until the sun finally came, started to really bear down. And then you can't drink the water fast enough.
Bill wants to know, how do you transport your bike to the starting point? Can you fly with a bike?
Most airlines will now allow you to fly with a bike. There is a company called Bike Flights that will take that just handles bikes and gets it from point A to point B. You need to have some little knowledge of how to take it apart and put it back together. If you're going to do some of these yourself, you can take your bike to any bike shop and tell them you'd like to ship it, and they will pack it and ship it for you for a very moderate cost. You're going to have to take the pedals off. You're going to have to twist the handlebars so they're going along parallel with the bike. But other than that, it's not really very, very difficult. You take the front wheel off and you put it in. You try and pad everything. I am normally throwing some of my t-shirts and jerseys and my helmet and anything else I can into the bike box so I don't have to carry it through the airport.
And so you take the bike box on the plane, or do you ship it ahead?
You can check the bike box on the airplane.
Okay.
One year, a friend of mine was late in getting his preparations together. I had already shipped my bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I took his bike with me on the airplane.
Okay.
And it just comes, and then you have to get it out of checked luggage and drag it to the where the Fuller van was meeting us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also have had bikes stolen too. As if you're not careful with your bike, I don't bring a lock anymore because it's just more weight. But I'm very careful to the bike is not out of my sight or out of the sight of other Fuller people. We've had people who were working on their bike, on a porch, on the stand. They went in to get something, got a drink of water. By the time they came back, the bike was gone.
I saw all the bikes in the church, in the picture of the church.
Oh, yeah. Well, we will take over any space, regardless of how large or small. We're like a gas. We expand to the available space. And, you saw the one where I had my own little niche carved out.
Yeah, nice.
But there was no niche in that church, to be had. And a pew is just a little narrow to sleep on. You have to be careful about rolling over.
For sure. For sure.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I had a question of how often and how long would you stop for doing the house repairs for people?
We generally try and do that over the weekend, so you can arrive Friday and spend Saturday and maybe even Sunday doing a build. When we were at another little town, Bonners Ferry up in Idaho, that was a bit of new construction. The Fuller Center there had 3 lots, and they had poured the foundation and put up the frame and everything, but we put all the drywall in over a period of 2 days, and most of the vinyl siding. So it just depends on, there's sometimes they have a build for a week. When I was on the 2022 ride along the Gulf Coast in Hammond, it was just embarrassing that this country, 8 months after a hurricane, still has people living under tarps. But we took, 2 days. This woman had both ends of her house. It was, manufactured housing with, built onto both sides. Both ends had been flattened by trees. And we took her whole roof off, put on new tar paper, did some of the landscaping. I no longer climb ladders, so I just hauled, as people threw shingles off, I hauled them to the pile. But it took 2 days to do that, to get everything off. And then we left, and another group was coming in to put the new shingles on. So where you can, you can tag team if you have different groups passing through. When we go to Aurora, Ohio, every time we pass through there, they have made a day of service around the fact that they have 40 extra people.
Yeah. So Phil wants to know where you like to ride around in the DC area, other than riding to Poolsville.
Well, I am still mad that White's Ferry has been closed for
join the crowd.
If I want a long ride, I will go down the Capitol Crescent and cross at Key Bridge, and then pick up the W and OD and go out to Poolsville. If I don't feel like going quite as far, I'll go to Herndon. I'll sometimes just go down and ride around Haynes Point. If I want to go north and I'm not, if I'm in the kind of the 30-mile range, I'll go up to WSSC, the plant on River Road, some nice hills there, and then, drop down to Great Falls Park and climb back up and, then come home. Washington is a great cycling town. And, the nice thing about MacArthur and River after you get to Potomac is people expect you to be there.
Yeah.
That's where you get in trouble is where people don't expect you to be somewhere, and boom, they're not looking for you. There's so many cyclists on MacArthur and River that you're not a surprise to anybody. At least that's what I tell my wife.
Unfortunately, a lot of cyclists have been hit.
Yeah.
It's very sad. So the first ride that I knew about was when you used to bicycle up to McDaniel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
College, when your son was in college up there?
Yeah. And
so how did you get there from Bethesda? Obviously, you didn't go up 270 and...
No, you can take the Montgomery County Park System to Lake Needwood.
Uh-huh.
And after that, there's about 10 or 15 miles that I consider to be not great, cycling roads. They're not that wide. There's no shoulder. There's, you're going around curves. But after that, and I forget what the main road to yeah, is
the 27?
27. Yeah, 27 has a nice wide shoulder, and it's not that busy. You know, it's just a nice road. So I could bike up there and have lunch with my son and bike home. And after that, I had the bike to the beach,
Right,
that I found, and that led to the Tour de Fred, which was modeled on a tournament my father had with one of his lifelong friends. They loved golf, and they had the La Hinch Invitational, and they made a very large trophy, and then they never invited anybody else to play, so one or the other of them always won. The Tour de Fred expanded on that because I never invited anybody else. But then I didn't have a trophy either, so. But I started.
But you had bragging rights.
Yeah, I had bragging rights that I had won the tour, and you know, I started in 2010 with the bike to the beach, and I added a century ride every year until 2015. And by that time, you know, I was running out of new rides to have. So the Fuller Center came along at an opportune time.
Cool. That's cool. So do you when you were doing the Fuller Center, they allow you to do fundraising to help cover the fees?
Well, the $4,500 is really all their cost to get you across the country is about 150 or 160. I think it's gone up like everything else. But that covers, you know, because they have donated peanut butter. They're very tight with the dollar on anything except housing. And, you know, at one point they had, when we stayed in San Francisco, downtown, our van was broken into twice.
Wow.
And they stole everything in the trailer, rather, each time, except they didn't touch the coconut peanut butter. You couldn't give that stuff away. You know, people lost the bikes, we lost our tools.
Wow.
That's one of the advantages of traveling, you know, in a group, you know, among other things, is you have tools.
Yeah.
You have a floor pump, as opposed to having that little tiny pump, that, you know, frame pump that you have to try and get your tires up to 90 or 100 pounds in. You have a stand, you have, you know, your lube is carried for you, all the things that you might need. I had a derailleur cable that came apart on me on the road.
Wow.
And, you know, we had extra derailleur cables. We could strip it out, thread it through. I did not do it. I've learned a lot about how to maintain a bike by watching people who know a lot more than I do. But
yeah, that's always one of my fears when I ride is, you know, if something happens, I know I'm toast because I don't know how to fix it.
Well, you need to be able to fix a flat. You know, my seat bag generally has 2 tubes, a tire iron, patch kit, a piece of chalk when I'm with the Fuller Center, because that's how we communicate with each other. We leave chalk marks on the road as if you're going to detour from the approved route. One thing that I do carry that not many people carry is I carry a medical type set of forceps, because those little wires from retreaded tires or construction sites get in, they will burrow right through your tube. And yet you cannot get a grip on them to pull them out. So I carry, you know, that. You know, I'm fairly self-sufficient until you get to a tire disaster, and then I need a ride.
Does anybody else have questions? Fred, this has been great.
I should have put pictures of the some tires that I had to replace in 2016, because the tread was literally the rubber was separating from the from the bias there. And it's another thing to consider when you're selecting a route. When we in 2015, when we went, getting out of the valley, getting out of the basin was just a trial. Everybody was getting 2 and 3 flats a day.
Wow.
Because you couldn't go on the road, and the access road was just so covered in wire and other trash that people were just, broken bottles. You just almost could not avoid it. And people were getting, 2 or 3 flats a day just trying to get out of that basin. Once you got out of the basin, life was good.
I hear a lot of comments about people who are riding the roads around here that the bike lanes are treacherous with debris.
They don't sweep them.
Yeah.
And when they put the bollards down, a lot of times that sort of prevents, the cars churn up dust and dirt, and it keeps things moving towards the side of the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You put the bollards down, any dust that falls in onto the bike path stays there. And I don't think they have a way to get it out, unless, they can't take the sweeper truck down there. It's going to be a problem for them, until they design and procure some specialized equipment.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate this.
Yes, thank you for being here, Fred. And thank you all for joining us and being here with us. So if you enjoyed this presentation, we've got some other great ones coming up. We have movie night tomorrow night. We're going to show Belfast. And next week we have an Ernie Pyle reenactor coming on Thursday, the 29th. And then Friday, we're going to be having line dancing with Ashley Couch, both at 7 o'clock in Spear Hall. So definitely don't miss out on those. And you can always register and find out more information about our events on our website, poolesvilleseniors.org. And you can always email us anytime at info@poolesvilleseniors if you have questions or anything like that. So if you'd like to say goodbye, you can unmute and you can do so.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very nice. Very, very fun presentation.
Yeah, I heard through the grapevine, Phil, that you're a big biker too.
I like to bike too. I'm a little limited now because my vision's getting pretty bad. So I mostly bike on the CNO now.
Oh, I don't find that pleasant at all. It's just too rough.
They have resurfaced quite a bit of it.
Okay, well,
starting at about Violet's Lock all the way up to Shepherdstown. It's very smooth now.
Oh, have you ever considered going through the Allegheny Trace?
I have done that. I have in the past done that. Yes, it's a similar surface up there.
Oh, that crushed limestone is perfectly fine for me.
I think they call this stone dust, and it seems to work real well.
Just, wash out your chain more often, I guess. And
oh, yeah.
Keep the wet lube on it rather than dry lube.
Yep.
Well, Fred, thank you so much. And I hope our paths cross soon. You take care.
I will look for your next pickleball accomplishment.
Yeah. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.